Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have the most special guest, my husband, Hal, who's already been on the show, but Olivia's never been on the show. So Olivia Celine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I knew you were going to laugh. Oh, my God. All right. So what we are talking about today is, and the
Someone's
purpose...
got to lighten the mood.
So the purpose of today's episode, and Hal, sit still.
It's my sciatica.
Okay, Olivia's crying. Okay, ready?
I'm so
3.
tired.
Wait, I should have my phone in my pocket.
No, you
my
shouldn't.
God.
Absolutely not.
All right, so the whole purpose of this episode, so that you guys have as context going in, is for us to really show like what really happens behind the scenes of a book launch. So I feel like for a lot of people, and people have said this to me, it's this assumption that it's, quite easy or straightforward to launch a book. It's like, okay, you write the book, someone edits it, you give it to a publisher, and then like, boom, it's on the shelf and like XYZ. But that was not the case at all. So even if you don't want to write your own book, honestly, after this episode, you might be like absolutely never writing a book. But even if you don't want to write your own book, it might just be a good episode to listen to if you're curious about just kind of what actually went on behind the scenes. So let me first start off by saying kind of the quick timeline and where we're going to start off. So for most of you, you will know that I wrote the book for about 6 years, or I didn't write it for 6 years, but it took 6 years to get to the point where we are now. So we're going to start about, well, I guess 3 years ago was when I had my first editor edit the book. So yes, Olivia.
And if you want before 3 years, then go back and listen to, we'll link it below, the episode about the book.
Amazing.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Amazing.
So about 3 years ago, I had my first editor who I'd met through my network of friends. She was the first one that edited the book. She loved the book. It was fantastic, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of thought, oh my God, great. The book is edited now. And the book was not edited. So like, it was like kind of step one of the editing process. She then introduced us, which is then kind of where we're going to start off, to a man named David. And David then, who we love. We
Sounds
love
like a
David.
Bible story.
Yeah, oh my God, it kind of does.
We're going to start in the story of David.
So,
All right, great.
yeah, let's start with the story of David. And that was about 2 years ago, Hal, to this date you said, or something or other. And that's when you started getting involved, which is when we hired David on. And maybe let's start with that. Like, what did David do?
So David, he was I think he was a CEO of a publishing company,
Okay.
and now he's a little bit older.
Yeah.
So he's like does consulting work, and he was pretty much basically walking us through the different routes we could take. Self-publishing, hybrid, full publishing. He's kind of our advisor.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he was. And so we learned a lot from that, but it also, I mean, there was a lot of patience that was built for me during this time. I'm still impatient, but I became more patient through the book time because I kind of thought, oh, once we got David on board, then it was like,
It was done.
It was done. And I mean, so many of you thought
If
as well
only.
listening.
If only.
Like the amount of times I was like, okay, the book's coming out on this date. And then it was like, nope, didn't come out. And then the book was coming out on the next date. So David, if I remember correctly, he was the one that read the book and was like, this needs more editing, but it is a really good book. And was it him that was like, I don't think you should self-publish? Was it him?
Yeah, it was. It was him, and yes, it was David who
Okay.
said not to self-publish. Well, he gave us the pros and cons, but he
Yes.
ultimately said like this has a really good shot at
Yes.
getting picked up by a publisher. So he started shopping the book around.
That's right. And he also told us we need to change the name of the book.
Yes. So obviously the original name was Has the Feminist Movement Fucked Us?
Yeah.
I actually don't know if he was the one.
Well, he said we shouldn't have fuck in the title.
Yeah.
And then Charlie, who is my book agent, she was the one that then was like, the title should get changed because you want like the radical feminist to pick up the book. And if they see that book, they're immediately going to be like, fuck this chick and not pick up the book. So we changed the book name so that the women that actually needed the book would pick up the book.
Yeah.
And not judge
But I
it
think-
from the title.
Yes, but back to David. So like at that point in the process, it was like us trying to figure out how we wanted to get the book out there. And it was kind of like a TBD on if it needed more editing, like if we were going to go self-publish.
Yep.
It definitely did need more editing.
Yes.
So that's one point to note is like you may as an author think you have been done editing, but guaranteed, especially if you're not self-publishing, it's going to change
Yeah.
again and probably for the better.
Yeah. I also want to say though, I'm naturally not like you know, some people say, oh, you're a gifted writer. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, if you read the first draft of the book, you probably wouldn't think that I'm like a gifted writer, but I also don't know how to write a book. And I think
You're not an author.
No. Well,
Like,
I
by
am,
trade.
I am an author.
Or you're not
but,
a writer
I'm not
by
a writer
trade.
by trade. Yeah. And for my next book, if I do another book, honestly don't know. But if I was to do another book, then the way that I would do it differently is have that outline, and I would know how to write a book. Whereas the first, like, you know, writing this book, it was just dumping shit on a page. But a big problem was that I repeated myself a lot through the book and it didn't flow as well, but everything was there.
Yeah. Yes. So back to David, he loved the book. He was shopping it around. And I remember we started doing a little bit of like a PR push to A, get you practice, and B, just to continue to like network and get the name out there. So we did that. We were on radio stations for a little bit. It was good practice. And then we ultimately had to, if I remember correctly, we had to make a decision on because David was our like consultant advisor. He was like, you need to pretty much decide, like, are you going to self-publish or are you going to try and go with a publisher? And at that point, he had introduced us to Charlie, who, fast forward, is our book agent, and could not recommend her highly enough. Obviously, we can go.
We'll go into things later. Yeah.
But yeah, so he introduced us to Charlie, and that's when we had to decide, like, okay, is this worth an investment? Because it is an investment.
Big.
If you're going to go all the way, get a publisher, because hiring an agent is expensive. You know, that's an expense. Or an investment.
Good choice of words. Thank you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Good money mindset.
And like,
He is the money man.
Yeah.
so we had the meeting with Charlie, and then we had that in-person day.
Yes,
remember?
that's
Because we said, let's start with that. Because so her agency, they do the book part.
Yeah.
They do all sorts of things,
Yes.
but they also do like a strategy day. So we could have stopped there, but yes.
Pause before we keep going on that. What was that process look like? What did that decision process look like? From David says, here's why I would not self-publish. Here are your options. Here's Charlie. But like, what did the dynamics of that look like?
I remember something that David said that was like really made me change my mind on the self-publishing. So initially I was like pretty set on self-publishing just because I was like, I am not having a publisher change my book. And I knew that what I had written about in the book, that it could rub a lot of people it could rub a lot of people the wrong way. And I also knew that, like, I had put so much blood, sweat, and tears into the book. I was so, like, I backed myself in every single word that I said in that book, that I was like, I am not fighting with a publisher to try and get them to see what I'm trying to write about, and then feeling like I have to change everything just to kind of like fulfill the contract.
And I think that's where, like, he made us aware that, like, that's not what happens. Like, that's kind of like when you get a publisher, a lot of people think publisher, they change everything.
Right.
And nowadays there's like, we had a hybrid approach.
Yes, which was amazing.
Which is great. But yeah, so like, and actually once we realized how much more editing was needed on the manuscript, you became more open to, especially when you can give the direction of where these edits go.
Yes. And two things. I remember, whether I said it to David or Charlie, I think I probably said it to both, to be honest. I was very clear on, like, these are my boundaries with a publisher, so that I could feel good about going into it. Of the publisher needs to be like, I love this message. And something that I was really big on when we were searching, or not even searching for a publisher, putting them out there, was I was very clear on, like, what were going to be the boundaries for myself. So I felt good going into that relationship and not feeling like I was going to have to change the book a lot. So one of the other really big things that David said that was like a big, like, it changed my mind with the self-publishing thing, was that he also said, maybe it was you, I can't remember, but there's like an authority that you can get still from going through the more traditional route than self-publishing.
Well, yeah, because the publisher has to sign. You have to sign.
And I remember that being a really big thing, especially given the topic of the book, where it's like, if a publisher got behind this topic of the book, there is like that extra bit of authority versus just self-publishing it myself, especially because of the topic. And when he said that, or when you said that, or when we were discussing that, I was like, I think that's actually a really big thing. And I remember David saying, we can just send it out to publishers and you don't have to agree to any of it. Let's just see what happens.
He started the initial publisher outreach.
Yeah.
Feedback was good. We ultimately, and in that time, we signed with Charlie. We had
Yeah.
that brand day. She really impressed us. I remember
Yes.
that. She
Yeah.
like
What did you love about her?
Oh my God, I just love that she's so blunt. That's my favorite thing about Charlie is that she's just really blunt because I'm like that and I like that in people.
correct. You weren't at that.
No,
I
you were
wasn't
not.
part of any of the book stuff
In the
until team members started to shift a little bit.
Yes.
And then my project manager brain couldn't hold back.
That's
I was
right,
like, can
that's
I please
right.
help with this?
And thank God.
Help.
Thank God.
Yeah, but that's strategy day was great. Charlie
Yeah.
really and her team really made us feel like because and ultimately again it's an investment, but they have the contacts. They know publishers, they know who to shop it out to. They made us feel very, very good about like the fun parts that you like the design of the cover page
Yeah.
to the logistics for me and the back end stuff and like all that goes into it.
Yeah.
And so that day I feel like is really what sold us on
Yes.
moving forward with Charlie and getting a publisher to sign. Regardless if you have a book and you don't know what to do, like get with an agent, do one of their just like kind of one off because we could have ended there.
Yeah.
And
okay.
we could have been like, nope, we're going to self-publish.
Yeah.
You know, so at least, and that investment wasn't as significant as continuing, as
Right.
like moving forward.
But I just remember like to come back to your question, Olivia, what made us decide to like go with Charlie and make that investment was I was just like, I just could not do this half-assed. And even throughout the whole time, I remember like during my meltdowns, you know, and whatnot, like when we were then in the book launch, it was like, I have to just feel like I've really done everything I can. And obviously initially before falling pregnant and whatever, I dreamt of the book launch looking a little bit different. But I was like, I just need to know that I have done everything that I can. The team has done everything that we can. So if we don't hit New York Times bestseller, it's okay. I won't feel like, oh, I could have done more.
Well, and you also couldn't hit New York Times bestseller self-publishing.
Right.
So on the New York Times bestseller note, or on that point, A, yes, you cannot get New York Times bestseller if you self-publish. B, getting New York Times bestseller, that is a whole, we could have 5 episodes on that, but that is a whole process in and of itself. There's a minimum you have to get it in that first week. But at the end of the day, that was the deciding factor for you with Charlie is that she knew our best chances of getting New York Times bestseller and all the things that go into that. It's more than just selling a certain amount of books. There's marketing that goes into it. There's bookstores that have to buy it. The
Distribution
There's
things.
PR.
Yeah.
There's and like again, the contacts, they
Matter.
know who to talk to about the book and getting it on certain people's radars and making sure that it's going beyond just what we know from like our smaller vantage point. They're able to go bigger.
in our audience.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, but you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Let's
we
also-
do appreciate
Holy moly.
all of the reviews, all of the shares, like all of that helped.
Could not have done this without what you've built with the MYH
No,
community.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Also grateful to Instagram for Reels coming out because that really helped me go viral a few times to grow the following. So thanks, Instagram.
We love you. Mean it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg. Hey.
Olivia, keep going out.
So then we moved forward with Charlie, and Charlie was really the not only like getting the publishing deal, which kind of ties back to you having that meeting with Anthony. She was critical in getting the book to the final stage, like the actual manuscript. So when we started with Charlie, you know, we did the logistics, we did kind of like the game plan, and then they dug into the manuscript. Like this needs a lot of change.
Yeah.
To the structure, there's different types of editing. There's developmental editing. There's all sorts of things.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I blacked out.
So that was probably a year and a half. We hired another editor, and this is what you can. So Charlie first was like, okay, when she caught that, she was like, okay, we need to find an editor because like her team obviously couldn't do it, even though at the end of the day they ended up doing a lot of it. But Charlie initially and her team broke up the book from what you had and like took out more than a third of it.
Yes.
For potential second book, or there was just too many like separate topics in the book.
I remember that.
And you needed to cut it down. So she took the first stab at like organizing it, like changing the chapters up, and that's
Making
where
a flow. She made like a more of like a beginning, middle, end.
yeah, and that's where like her framework started coming, like the heal, embody, radiate.
Yeah.
Started developing, and that's when we were running new. She was throwing out different new titles of the book.
Oh, yeah, and that's right. And I remember her being like, tell me like the things that you talk about. Like, what are the constant words that you use? What are the frameworks that what's your methodology? And that's where she was like, that's where I spat out the whole like becoming her and describing like this idea of her. And that's when she was like, that's what the title needs to be.
Yeah. And then from there, she was like, okay, so that we have the structure now, but we need a good edit. So she got us in contact with another editor. So this will be the second one. The first one was before we even met David. So if you, the second one was, I'm sure you can go into.
I mean, so the second one, it was a bummer, to be honest, because we paid her a lot of money. And when we got on meetings with her and like interviewed her, she was really sure that she could do the book and that she like, you know, I thought she read the book and was like fully like, maybe she didn't say, to be honest, word for word, like, I agree with this message, but you shouldn't take on a book if you can't write it well.
Well, no, I think what you mean is that you went to her to say, hey, this book may be triggering to you.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with this?
Right.
She assured you yes. And then over time, as we started getting like her edits back,
it sounded nothing like me.
I remember
absolutely not. Like, I was fuming. I remember there being some like rage moments. Nothing like me. It had completely changed. Like, literally, I remember saying to the team and to Charlie, like, where did she pull this from? I have never written about this. And then I remember, so then long story short, we obviously fired her because she was incapable of writing. We didn't fire her.
No.
What did we do with her?
She's like, oh my God, wait, she still works here?
No. Okay. That's why I was like, you guys know the behind the scenes. I don't even know what the behind the scenes.
No, we did not fire her. We let her do her thing. And you didn't, what you just described of like, oh, this isn't me. That wasn't until it was done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you're right. You're right.
There was second chances after second. They like keep going back. But what was interesting is a lot of people would have just gone with it. Like, oh, this is just what you do. She's making it more palatable. Like, okay, do it. But instead what you put your foot down of like, absolutely not. And that I remember having that conversation with a former team member. It was like, where's Monica? This isn't Monica. She would never say that. And that could have hurt your reputation.
Yes,
that could have hurt the people that you wrote the book for and the people that have supported you. You could have lost everything. Like, it's a really big deal to know the fine line between refinement and then completely rewriting something. And now it no longer is you. And then it could have been a totally different outcome.
Yeah. And I was really big on that of like, because I have a podcast, people know my voice. They know how I talk. I've written on Instagram for years. The book has to sound like me, even if it's been heavily edited by someone else. If I can't read this in a way that I would almost kind of talk, and if it doesn't feel authentic to me, then I'm not putting the book out.
Well, agreed, but there is a fine line there. Like, there was a lot throughout this process of like having to explain to you, like, this still has your voice. You may not think it does, but it is.
Yeah.
But with that editor, it did not.
Not with that editor, but I'm saying, like, if you read the book, like, you'll know, like, you don't write your Instagram captions like that. I mean, you go on and on the captions. But
every time he's like, babe, you should make this shorter. I'm like, okay, thank you.
I mean, did you
bite size it?
Yeah.
You've been also told that. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a thing.
Times.
So like, you're also right.
Yeah.
You're
But
not wrong.
I was the first one to say this 2 years ago, and she was like, what?
Yeah.
Like you have no idea. I am IG marketing like queen. Like, I know these things. Like, stay in your lane.
And okay, so this could be a whole separate conversation, which we'll save you from.
Yeah.
But is the whole idea how marketing has changed? Because also her Instagram captions and writing them long that's what got her to where she is. She did all of that without us. We always have to remember that too. But now it's also being willing. Again, this is that discernment that you always talk about, having the discernment of when do I cut the editor, when is this no longer me, where am I getting lost in this? But also with marketing, the Instagram captions you have found, the shorter ones hit home better.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't mean you have like lost yourself. It's just knowing how to be malleable and evolve over time.
And there was so much like that I had to grow and develop in with, and like Hal knows this, like with the editing and the writing of the book, and like where I really had to, like, it was hard for my ego because I was also very attached to writing in a certain way, having my messaging land in a certain way and whatnot. And like, this is where one of the things I was grateful for with Hal, because he was just stubborn back to me in a good way of just like reminding me, this is different. This is not your business. This is not an Instagram caption. Like, you need to your voice actually needs to be a little bit different. So we hired her. We basically like through all those rewrites were then like, this is not a match. Was that correct?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was like, so we had an old team member along with Charlie and this was delaying it more.
Yeah.
So like this was when like you originally wanted it end of
Before the wedding. Before the wedding. Yeah.
And then
I remember David saying you could have all these books around the wedding as a joke. I remember him saying that.
Party favors.
Could have been good. Anyway.
So the former team member and Charlie, they worked very hard, lots of time, maybe probably about a month. This is after Terrible Edits came out.
Yep.
So basically, they then were working with. She did provide a little bit of structure. She did. So I remember they used that along with the edits from like Charlie's original before she handed to the second editor.
Mm-hmm.
And then they basically came up with the final structure that then someone on Charlie's team, who we love,
and me.
And you, yes, and you,
Yeah,
because then you had to get
me.
re-involved.
Yep.
Chapter by chapter. And then that's kind of how we got the manuscript to the final stages. And while all this was happening, all of the marketing started picking up, all the PR started picking up, getting that in place.
Yeah.
And that was even before the manuscript was done. So and the publisher had agreed. So back to kind of like when we signed with the publisher, Charlie, after that brand entirety day, was working with, they put together and actually based off of her edits or her structural edits of the, becoming her, heal, embody, radiate. She summarized that basically into like a pitch. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that. And she sent it out, and then Anthony was like, "I want this book." And I actually then Anthony.
Well, there was a couple different publishing houses that came that we were working towards. She had a good relationship with. I hope I can say this, but she had other books with authors that she was working with go through Post Hill.
Yep.
And Post Hill Press is the publisher.
Anthony is the
CEO of Post Hill. Anthony was really, really excited about the book. And then when we were in New York, you had a meeting with him.
Yes.
And this is before the manuscript was done. I remember that. This was during the second editor doing the shitty edits.
When is this in time? Where are we?
We are in I can tell you right now, we are in 2020, end of 2023, early 2024.
So before the wedding.
Yeah. I think 2024.
I think it's 2024.
So then I had lunch with Anthony. He wanted to have lunch with me. And I remember being like really chuffed because Charlie was like, he never wants to have lunch with anybody. And oh my God, Olivia.
You've already done it.
I know. We're just going to keep going.
I'm sorry.
I've said this 3 times.
At this point, I'm thinking she's never going to invite us back ever.
Oh my God. Okay.
We're
whatever.
fired.
I'm continuing on.
Okay.
And Anthony loved the book. And that was obviously, like I said to you guys before, was really important to me to work with someone that was like fully behind the message.
Yes.
So yes, had lunch with him. I think it was more like March 2023.
Yeah, I think it was 2024.
And then like Hal said, so then Cindy on Charlie's team, Cindy and I basically then had to essentially like rewrite the book.
This was much later.
We're now in like December because we were in Australia and I was spending all that time in Japan rewriting the book, which was, I remember being very angry about it because it was like, how many times do I have to write this book? And it's like, we obviously paid this editor so much money and then it was butchered and I'm having to go back and redo it again. In hindsight, there was a lot of pros because I was able to, get even more refined with what I was saying and make sure things were even sharper and, make sure that I had really dotted my I's and crossed my T's so that like the Karens of the world wouldn't just take things out of context because I could make sure that all the context was there. But that took Cindy and I, 2 months together to edit all of that, which was a lot of work. And then that final edit finished at the end of January is when I handed it in. And I was like, I never want to see this book again in my life.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then any little final edits, I just said, Cindy, you have to do it. And I trusted her because she was nailing my voice and she also supported the message. So then end of January, that was when we really then started to pick things up with PR. And in hindsight, and I think that we only had so much control in this situation, something that Olivia and I had spoken about, is that I had asked Charlie and her team so many times, even before the wedding, and at the end of last year, what PR can we start doing now? What prep can we start doing now? And I think what we figured out, and you can dive into this, Olivia, is that this industry just runs a little bit last minute. And we as a team like to be ahead. We like to be prepared. We like to do things in advance if we could. But unfortunately, no matter how many times we asked, it kind of just wasn't happening. And I don't know whether that really was like Charlie's fault per se, or it was just more that like it seems like that's just how this industry works, kind of like the wedding industry of like, you know, it's you really only start doing things like 2 months before your wedding, even if you would like to get things organized 8 months prior. So now this is really, Olivia, and how this is where you guys start doing everything, because basically I was like,
done.
I am done. I can't do this anymore. I was so over it at this point, like fully checked out basically. For all the ladies listening to this episode, if you make money, whether you make the same amount that your man makes or that the average guy makes that you're dating, or whether you make more money, if you find yourself sometimes feeling like money gets in the way of your sex life or gets in the way of you being in your feminine, him being in your masculine, do yourself the favor and get the feminine female breadwinner. Whether you're in a relationship or dating, I do not want you to end up feeling like money affects the kind of man that you're with and affects his ability to show up in leadership and in that masculine energy. And I don't want you feeling like you immediately kind of default into your masculine because of money, or build resentment because you're making more money than him, or even just making the same amount of money as him. I'm telling you right now, without going too deep into the details, but I have podcast episodes on it. If you don't already know this, you'll find out soon enough. Money is the number one reason for divorce. And it is a massive problem in relationships these days, especially because more and more women are making money, which is amazing. So let's not have it then subconsciously block us all from making more money as women, because we don't want it to affect our sex lives. We all want hot sex and we all want big bank accounts. So do yourself the favor, the feminine female breadwinner, and thank me later.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I came in, it was beginning of the year, because I also wasn't full-time for you yet when all of this was going on. So I was independent contractor. I was working on something here, something there, more podcasting, that kind of thing, customer service, just like one-off, very specific focused pieces of the business. Then some things shifted with the team, things shifted with me, and then I stepped in full-time. And then it was like, okay, I want to get my hands dirty in this, because there's a lot going on. I do not know how anybody does this by themselves. I don't think they do. I think the whole self-made thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
But I think that there is so much that goes into it, that you're overseeing logistics, you're overseeing obviously writing the book, being the brand.
Yeah.
And then there was someone that needed to come in, and then Charlie's team's over here working on other pieces. We needed like someone to weave all the threads together. And that's where I stepped in to help with that, to even just help take some load off of you, because there was so much going on, and it's fast paced, it's quick. You're privy to some of it, but then you're also kept out of some of it because they just know what they're doing. So they just like put their heads down and focus. Charlie's team, the agent and her team. But then there's the whole PR piece. So in hindsight, I do think we should have started sooner. I don't think it's anyone's fault per se. I just think it's more, this industry works differently than PR for like a normal coach. And like, oh, we're going to get you on some podcasts. This is a little bit different. And I just think that there was a lot to consider. I mean, it's like you're not just like stopping everything and writing a book and launching a book. You also have an entire business that's running, that's very well established. You have clients to serve. We have other things going on. There's a certain way you are on Instagram and a certain way that you like to do things. And there were some where we had to be like, okay, in order to get this, book noticed or get in front of the right people, maybe we need to like tweak this word here or change this thing over here. But like, again, still keeping you, but knowing how to then be able to pitch that. Because again, it was different than all the pitching we'd done for you in the past. It was very specific.
Yeah.
And so I do think we could have hired a different PR team potentially. I think that it's such a specific art. And we are very mindful of who we pitch to and how we pitch. And there are ethics are important to us. Integrity is important to us. We are people that stand by wanting to protect you and the message, and not just like, okay, whose podcast can we get her on and throw her at everybody.
I remember that being a thing, right? Of like a lot of PR companies, they will just mass pitch, and we just couldn't get behind that. Like when you write up a pitch, it is so specific to who we're writing to. And I feel like that was like a challenge point, because we wanted that level of effort and integrity and whatnot, but and it makes sense, to a degree, where a lot of PR companies are just like, we're not going to spend time doing that.
Well, and in the age of AI, there's also that component. Yeah. So like, how we use AI in the business is very specific and very intentional and very well thought out, versus just like, oh, we could use AI for this and then that and then the other thing. So I think that's another piece of it. So anyway, PR, to try to wrap this up, because you got your hot girl walking a little bit.
I do. Andrea's waiting.
Yeah, Andrea's waiting. So with the PR, it was working with Charlie's team on that. Again, would have hired a PR agent, but we also have Suzanne. Where do we fit Suzanne into the conversation?
Oh, and people asked about my media coach. We'll get to that. Okay, so
Okay,
let's
get
keep
to
going.
that.
Because she came in, March? So we'll get to that.
So
Okay.
we had like a whole list of PR we'd already done. So we were pitching this whole time. And so
And I also want to preface this with there was an intent because we had decided like we were going after New York Times.
Oh, yes.
So
yes.
like for me,
that adds a lot.
And behind the scenes, and for Olivia, lots of pressure to get the message out there, get the book out there, get you out there. So that's why we were like going.
And meanwhile, you guys are also trying to factor in. I'm like 6-7 months pregnant, however many months I was at this
Like
point.
4.
Well, no, if we're
January,
like, okay, January, yeah.
But we started PR in like April. It was like
Yeah.
March. It was March.
Yeah, and by the time we were really getting to a lot of the crunch of the PR, I was like 6.5, 7 months pregnant. So you guys were also trying to be like, okay, we need to, and like you said, I have clients, I'm running Queen Alchemy, and my biggest thing is like, that's my number one priority, right? I was not going to let that slide for the sake of being on somebody's podcast or whatnot. So you guys were also trying to juggle, like Monica has her calendar very specific. We need to manage the fact that like her stress levels shouldn't be that high, like shouldn't get that high right now because she's pregnant. She's trying to do clients like where is the white space? And like there was a lot that you guys were juggling. It wasn't just like how much PR we can get. It's also factoring all the other things we had on our plate.
Audiobook that you oversaw completely, the design of
Yeah.
everything, the redesign of things,
Yeah.
every single little decision that you had to make on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But I think this is where with like podcasting, it's so sexy to be like, oh, let's just go after these big names and let's
Yeah.
get on all of these podcasts. And, you know, it looks easy, but it's not. And they book out years in advance even is what we found out. So now this is really the thing about the book too, is it's the long game. So it's all the little seeds we've planted or all the conversations we've had or the work that we've done that will be fruitful even in the long run. Obviously got New York Times bestseller.
Which
Yeah.
Huge
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
goal. And now, like, it's funny because we were joking on the call with Charlie. I feel like we're just getting started. Like, oh shit, this isn't over.
Yeah,
We
no.
got
it's
so
just
much to
beginning.
do.
It really is just beginning.
Yeah.
And obviously if we didn't have maternity leave, things would look very
Yeah.
different right now.
Yeah.
But things will pick up again after maternity leave.
So to wrap up PR, because then we can move on to the next point,
Yeah.
it really is like intentional, well thought out. I was like scouring podcasts and Instagrams, and we're just getting in the mind of your ideal client and the women that you work with. And it's like, what are they listening to? Making sure there's pieces in lifestyle, there's pieces in business, there's pieces in relationships, all these different niches that need your book. And then it was also being willing, which at first you were really hesitant on, to be on podcasts that maybe aren't as big, because it was like your time is so valuable, especially because you have so much going on and you're pregnant. And we know there's, you know, a million things you're juggling, but you had to compromise by saying, okay, not that you don't care about like mid-tier podcasts, but it's more just like, I don't really have the time for this, but I have to sacrifice and make the time for it.
Yes.
Because that will pay off to getting you on the bigger podcasts in the long run. And those conversations also matter.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say on the PR as well, for anyone that's considering a book, also factoring in that it does help when I've been on like a bajillion podcasts already before we were even doing these pitches. Just like in the nature of my business, I have an Instagram following. Like I've been doing this work for nearly a decade. A lot of people know who I am. So when people are actually like opening up the email, they do already know who I am. And so it's either like, is it a fit for their podcast? Are they booked out? That kind of stuff. And so if you're coming in and you have no, like you haven't built any kind of, what's the word?
Presence on
Presence for yourself, that obviously is going to make things even harder. So I
And
think
authority.
Yes, authority. So I think it's extremely important in today's day and age, just with how like organic PR can be and how organic marketing can be, build that presence even as you're writing the book, you know?
And keeping in mind too that if you don't have it, that's even more of a reason probably to get a full traditional publishing agreement, because they do, like we did the hybrid approach, and where we have the publisher who it's their imprint and they distribute it through Simon & Schuster, which is the big boy, the Mac Daddy, and which is still who this distributor would be if you were to be a traditional publishing. If we went the traditional publishing route, which is the royalties, and but then they would do the marketing, they would do the PR, because they have more skin in the game.
Yeah.
Versus, does that make sense?
Yes.
So that we
There's
took on a
pros
lot
and
of
cons
that.
to both. We loved the 50-50 because it meant that one, we had more say in it because it was half ours, but also two, we would make more money from actual book sales long term. It means that you have to invest a lot more upfront because you're paying for half of it.
A lot more upfront.
But it also means like majority of people, you get an advance, right? I got no advance. So you get paid
or the publisher is covering it.
Yeah,
in a traditional way.
Yeah, so but in a traditional way, most of the time, if I'm understanding correctly, you get an advance, so you get paid like $60,000, right? And that's actually meant to be, from how Charlie explained it to me, that's meant to be like how you live whilst you write your book, right? So it's like people's whole job is to write their book, and I'm trying to write my book obviously between my actual job, and then though after that, once the sales start coming in, you're making like it's something like 2% of book sales. So like. I know everybody's obviously different.
It's different,
but you're making
it's
pennies, like absolute pennies. And so to me, it was like, I've put so much work in. If I can make half of the book, however, like the math works out, that's amazing.
But again, so to your point, yes, if you can make half, but that's a huge asterisk there because you have to have the money
Yes.
to do the investment upfront for the PR, the marketing,
Yes.
pay your team, extra
Yes.
hours, all that stuff. So you have to factor that in.
Well, you also have to ask, do you want to be an author?
Yeah.
Or are you also like a coach who's also an author? Because
Right.
that's very different. Someone
Yeah.
would be like, oh, I've got it made. You're going to pay me $60,000 to just like sit around and write a book. And then you put the book out for me and like I can make pennies and it doesn't matter because now I'm like on to the next book part. Like if you're a writer and an author, that's so different. We had to be so specific with the way that we approached this with you, which is where Hal and his brain came in because you're a coach who also wants to make her work accessible. So here's my book.
Yeah.
Because everybody can get
So it
that.
depends what your priorities are. There's no right or wrong. It truly is just priorities.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now let's, what?
Nothing.
She's got her hot girl walk.
No, I just
No,
was
I
like,
know.
wait.
Okay.
I can't remember whether you were going to say something, Hal, that we were going to get into. Otherwise,
I have something.
Yes,
Okay,
go.
Yeah. Hi.
Go.
Okay. I'm on the Zoom raising my hand. The networking, because that's also the other key pieces. I also do think that people in today's society, this is not to name names, but a lot of us think that we are, this might sound a little harsh. I don't mean this. So nobody take
bring
this,
it, Olivia.
entitled. Like, and
Oh, I've said that before on
all
my
of
podcast.
this.
This ain't new. We're
I know.
fine. Keep going.
But it's this idea that like, oh, I shouldn't have to go do that. Like I should just get what I want. Or but you put like again, a decade of this work almost, right? We're at 8 years now that you've been doing this. The first 3 years you didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Then it was like, okay, I'm going to go to all of these networking events. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm investing in things. I'm getting in the room with the people I want to be in the room with. I'm willing to get to know people. I'm willing to put myself out there because not just because you're trying to get something, but because it's like, that's how collaboration works. Like, again, you didn't do this by yourself. You had an entire team. And it's kind of like what Emma Gertie is talking about now that's going viral too, because people are like so pissed off at her.
Yeah.
But
I don't know
it's
about
this idea of, it's the Skinny Confidential and Diary of a CEO woman.
Yeah, I don't know what the bit is that's going viral.
The piece around like women can't do it all. She's like, I don't do it all. Like I have it all, but I have, 2 nannies. I have this. Someone drives me places so that I can
And like,
do this.
thank you for that transparency, Emma,
Exactly.
because how many women project this idea, which is then so harmful to other women, of just like, it's so easy. I'm just like a CEO and I have my
work
kids
2 hours a
and I
day.
have this. Well, I think I've told you this before of like our housekeeper, Laura, she once said to me that one of her clients doesn't let her ever be home when the kids come home because the mom doesn't want her kids knowing she has help. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that is so damaging. And this is like she works full time, the mom. Anyway, beside the point. My point is that I wanted to bring up on that note too, is that when I was doing a lot of these podcasts and whatnot, people would say to me like, and they would kind of maybe not introduce, but they'd mention it on the podcast and I would just shut that down pretty quickly of like, how are you doing it all? Like, oh my God, like, Monica's amazing. She's 7 months pregnant. She's doing a book tour, blah, blah, blah. And I would just be like, no, like, yeah, I'm doing that. And like, yeah, it's also a lot, but you guys are actually doing everything, right? We get to a hotel and like I'm having a nap and Hal's spending an hour setting up everything, putting everything together, driving me there, going to the venue. I am getting dressed, getting my hair done, doing my clients, showing up and doing what is so easy for me, which is reading my book and then answering questions that people have. Like I did not do this. It was a lot of work, but I do not feel like it burnt me out. I do not feel like I was pushing myself to the brink where, you know what I mean? Like obviously I was pregnant, so there was a bit more tears than normal, but I think that's a really important thing of like, you cannot do this without support. You really can't.
Well, and I mean, Hal would be up till 1 a.m. just like having a nervous panic attack, and we would have to like talk him off the ledge because
And
it's
I'm like passed out.
yeah, right. Because that's in a way that's how it should be, because that's the role that he was playing in us. Like, and so I do like, we had a really solid team, and we were willing. That costs money. You have to pay for that, you know. So it was a sacrifice in some areas, but it was well worth it because we just wanted to protect you and be like, yeah, sure, I can't get on a podcast for you.
Yeah.
Of course, we would do it if we could.
Yeah.
We can't coach your clients, but you got to just show up, like you said, do the thing you love, the thing that comes so naturally to you, have the conversations, coach the people, and then everything else could like close the mental tab and know that the team's got it.
Yeah.
And that's been a long time that it's taken to cultivate that.
Yeah. I remember when someone texted me being like, what's your dress for tonight? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I had to ask Hal. Like when I say I had no idea about like what was going on, like truly no idea. Okay, so let's talk about Suzanne and the media coach, because there was quite a few questions of like, what do you do with your media coach? So yep.
So I can.
Okay, yeah, you want to go?
Because I think I was one who pushed for that.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
So it was, Charlie, the book agent, she had mentioned Suzanne earlier on and then kind of again. And as we got closer to launch, obviously, since we're doing, we're trying for New York Times, USA Today, all of those, it was where we knew media appearances were going to happen, or we were going to try for them, and we needed you to be media ready.
Yeah, and he's saying TV, not like podcast. Podcast, I knew what I was doing. It was the TV.
Well, and what I also want to say is we didn't try. She manifested that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olivia.
Like, because I think that's a key component. No, I know you don't like that.
No,
but also, like, it was already done. Like, the way we talked about it, you different.
Yeah.
Hal was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, but it was also around, like, we already knew it was done. Like,
And then now the logic side.
Same result, different way to get there.
Yeah.
Manifest.
So Monica would meditate and masturbate. And I'm just kidding. And then Hal's like, all right, did anybody, going into the orders and like this person just bought 5. Okay, telling the team, woo. Yeah, like a lot of it. Okay.
Okay, keep going.
No. Yeah, so Suzanne, we started a month with her. She's fantastic.
Yes,
we love Suzanne.
I love you, Suzanne.
Yes.
We actually both, I think that first month, we both did a package with her. Like you did one, I did one.
Yeah.
Yours was the bigger one because I think it was her helping you with the podcast, with all the podcasts that you were being booked on other people's,
and the training for the TV,
and the training for the TV too. That came after that first month.
Okay, yeah.
She would research the podcast. She would tell you, a little bit about the background of the podcast.
Yeah.
So you knew where to focus
the biggest
conversation.
Suzanne does a lot of different things, like media coaching, media training is one aspect of it. Of what she offers, and which is what we ended up doing more longer term. And we plan to have Suzanne long term. Yeah. As we kind of shift, and like she likes to say, Monica 2.0.
I know. But what I want to say for people to understand of like really how Suzanne helped me, because even like with podcasts, like Monica has no problem talking. I have absolutely zero problem talking.
She helped you. She helps you get like what I like for you to do more and get to the fucking point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, okay, let's all have a laugh. It's when when you said to me, okay, you've been booked on a this radio show or whatever. Maybe it was one of the the San Fran one, something or other. And it was like, you have a 2-minute interview and Hal just goes, you talking for 2 minutes? Ha! Like you thought it was just so funny.
I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe you did that.
Literally crazy. Yeah. Anyway.
She's been extremely helpful.
Yeah, extremely helpful. And even with the podcast, for example, the biggest thing that she helped with for the long form content, and the thing that I've struggled with, is that when somebody asks a question sometimes, I'm like, this is going to take me 15 minutes to answer because I want to go so deep. And that was something that she loved about me, because she likes to work with people that are like really intentional with their work and obviously like know it really well. But it's a problem when you're on TV, when you're on short radio shows, etc., where someone asks a question like, what is feminine energy? And I am not going to give, and obviously our audience knows this, I'm not going to give this like, fluffy answer of it's creativity, it's nurturing, because then women think that's what I have to be feminine, and I can't like also be discerning and have direction and blah, blah, blah. So she really helped with the podcast in terms of helping me to like curate some of these answers, essentially, where people would often ask me these questions that I would feel like, oh God, how do I make this short? Because we want to get to the next point. She also just gave me like tips about when people are interviewing and how to come across like as even more of an authority, or how to come across like,
Well, there was the example of like, if someone's not leading the conversation, you feel kind of awkward and there's weird pauses, or like you don't know where to go with something.
Like a bad interviewer.
How to redirect that and like bring it back to the conversation.
Yes, and she actually listened to a recent episode where that was happening, and because it was like a really bad interview, and she said I crushed it. So I just want to say that because as an example of like
it was a really bad interviewer,
but but that's an example where that is in the past. It would really stump me of like I am so like I want to give value, and if that person is not asking me questions where I can give value, or just talking about themselves or whatever, I'm like it makes me feel kind of like, what am I meant to do right now? And so she helped me with that. And then TV and the radio, that was the biggest one, 100% the biggest one.
Because Charlie's team had booked for like by the launch week, and they were coming in hot towards the end.
Oh yeah.
There were 8 or 9 TV interviews during launch week that we were juggling with. So we were in New York. You had to do them in New York. One was in person, which is great. That was Pix 11.
Yep.
And Suzanne was really
link
helpful.
It below.
Yeah.
But Suzanne was absolutely critical for that week. 100%. Like.
Yeah. And especially for little things like when people would throw like that Pix 11, like we have an expert coming on talking about work-life balance. And when she saw that, she was like, fuck, work-life balance. And because my stomach dropped. I was like, work-life balance? That's not what I fucking talk about. But she was like, you would not have known. You were so calm. She's like, you didn't swear. Go you. It's, but it was all the little trainings with her of, okay, how do we she would help me take a 15-minute answer into a 30-second answer. She would help me to feel more confident and comfortable knowing that you will never give them the full answer. And that's okay, because that's not what you're on a 7-minute segment to do. Like, no one's expecting that kind of thing. But what the whole purpose is to spark enough curiosity that someone then goes to the website. So there was a lot of that just like learning, like the education made me feel more confident and empowered with all of it.
Well, because again, you're a coach, you're a teacher, you do these things, you host events.
Yeah.
So becoming an author was a new realm. We hired support and invested in that you got in the room with who you wanted to get in the room with.
Yeah.
Suzanne, media is a totally different beast, and it's an art form. Podcast is different than TV, is different than radio. So also, I remember you worked with her a lot on like, okay, if I can't see them, like how do I, because that's awkward and that's new. So it's being willing to ask for support and being willing to invest in that, because it makes you the best. It doesn't make you less of you. You're not like putting on a show. You're refining something that is so huge and being able to give it to people in bite-sized pieces so they can actually digest it.
Yes. And that's what I'd struggled with in the past when we'd done other PR things, and when people had brought me on to like radio shows or interviews. That was my biggest struggle, where they would ask a question and they would have to cut me off mid-answer, and it's embarrassing, but it's like, it's a different art form. And so to be able to feel like, oh, I now know how to show up on this media platform and this media platform. So how I am on a podcast is different to a radio, is different to TV. And it has to be, but a big part of like all of this, to your point, is like getting in the room with the right people, putting down your fucking ego, like not thinking that you're an expert at being on, TV, even if you do your own podcast, because it's two completely different things. And realizing like that money that you invest in an expert literally comes back tenfold. And it comes back not just in like the money that comes back, but it's the confidence. Like I felt so good going into that Pix 11 TV interview and all the radio ones. I felt so good afterwards. Like Suzanne was so impressed because she would watch the like filming of it. And like it just made me really feel like during that whole book launch, like I did my best. you guys have been telling us how you have been loving the private podcasts that we've been putting together for different programs. And if you're in a program and there isn't one yet, just wait. We're slowly working on it all behind the scenes. But a lot of programs now have them, like Be a Lover Not a Mother, The Feminine Female Breadwinner. And we've also been, like New Year's Eve Bundle, Her Year has it. We've also been implementing it for parts of programs. So Queen Alchemy now has it with the meditations, for example. But what we've also done is for the free masterclasses. So if you have watched, or if you haven't, you absolutely need to. My masterclass, The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment, is life-changing. Like, it is truly, truly life-changing. And a 1-hour masterclass, of course, turned into a 2.5-hour masterclass because I love to give. And I wanted to give you guys all of the information possible on helping you to really understand what it actually takes to be in your feminine. Not what Instagram says or Pinterest says or gives you that like list of like feminine, masculine. No, what it truly means to be embodied in your feminine energy. So we did that masterclass, 2.5 episodes. We understand that's a lot to sit down and listen to or watch. So what we've also done, yay, is we have broken up this masterclass into 13 mini episodes that you can get access to on a private podcast. So even if you have got the masterclass like prior to this and you're like, oh my God, I want to get the private podcast, all you have to do is go to the masterclass page. The link is below, and then you'll see the option to sign up to the private podcast. Follow those instructions and you will get the link to the private podcast in your inbox. And that is how you can then listen to these bite-sized chunks, which is also really nice because you can come back to bite-sized chunks if you need to re-listen to something. And it's right there on your phone. So you can easily be listening to the masterclass for the first time or for the 5th time on your walk. And this way there is literally nothing cock blocking you from getting this really, really valuable information that truly can change your life, or at least like validate why you potentially haven't been getting results because you've been doing it the wrong way. You've been thinking that dancing around your bedroom is going to make you feel feminine when actually you still feel like you're a control freak. So make sure that you have registered for my masterclass, The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment. Either register it for the masterclass version so that way you can see all of the pretty slides and the pictures and absorb it that way. Or if you don't want to see the slides, you don't want to see the diagrams, then you can just, or you can do both, then you can register for the private podcast and listen to it on your phone when it suits you. So all the links are below. Let's jump back into the episode.
So then there's like kind of our final team that we had for book launch. Suzanne, Charlie's team, our team, and then publisher, of course.
Yeah.
And then the more that I actually work directly more with the publisher now than going through Charlie, because as you build that relationship, and now we're working on like the revised dust jacket, since bestseller, and
we're continuing PR. We're refining little bits of Instagram and the podcast and just different ways we can continue to get you with the right audiences and communities that need your work.
Yeah.
And it's just begun.
It really has.
And obviously the baby is made us on these meetings that we have with Charlie and Suzanne, like kind of like, all right, what's next? It's not, I wouldn't say it's been challenging, but we've known, so it's been, just something you have to deal with.
Yeah.
The best thing is that the book's out there forever. New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller,
and
all
LA
of that,
Times
and LA
bestseller.
Times.
Yeah.
None of that is going anywhere.
Yeah.
So again, it is long game.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say on ego death, quantum leaps, tantrums?
What is ego death?
Ego death.
It's when it's that
Your
moment
ego
where I'm like
dies.
crying on the toilet,
Amy's
thinking,
here, so it's gonna be
okay,
long.
we'll wrap this up. It's that moment where I was on the toilet downstairs in the mud room, crying my eyes out, being like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I don't care about the New York Times bestseller. I'm over this.
Tantrums,
I don't
toddler
wanna,
tantrums.
Yeah, I don't want to do any of the book parties. Like, I'm done. That's the ego death.
And there was quite a few of those. And so I think that doesn't mean you're on the wrong path or something's not aligned. It's just part of the process, which we'll also link those episodes below.
Yeah, I mean, we have episodes on that specifically, but just to quickly talk about the book, I was saying this on a podcast I was on the other day of people can think that sometimes if things aren't a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. And that's bullshit, because there was, I don't know, maybe Hal, you remember a lot more of this
for all
than
of
I am.
Well, for all of us.
Yeah, I feel like I have blocked out a lot of this because so much of today I'm like, oh my God, I don't even remember that. But there was a lot, especially during, the last kind of like 7 months where it was really crunch time, where I don't think there was anything that was fuck yes, besides like maybe an outfit potentially. Besides that, there was no fuck yeses. There was,
Well, when we got New York Times,
that was amazing.
But
what
then
I'm
mention that of like
But then after it was like, okay, we hit it.
Now
But
Now what?
even like book launch week, like we were chatting in New York in the
Yeah.
hotel lobby, and I'm like, how does it feel? And you're like, I mean, it's exciting, but I've envisioned this so many times. I've been manifesting this for so long.
I have visualized me being on TV so many times.
It's
the New York
almost like a
Times bestseller.
letdown. What does like? Why did you want to hit New York Times bestseller? Like, why was that important to you?
Oh, I love that question because Suzanne asked this to me too.
Ooh.
Yeah, just because I knew that people would be more likely to pick this book up over another book. People would be more likely to have me on the podcast than somebody else, or not at all. And I just care about getting the message out there. I mean, that's why I remember this one moment. We'll wrap up with this. I remember this one moment in London where I was standing like near the doors outside to my like little patio area because I was in like a little townhouse, and something prompted it. But I thought to myself, gun to my head. I know it's kind of like graphic, but I thought to myself, gun to my head, I would still talk about this. Like no matter how much shit I get from people, I would still talk about this message. Like that is how passionate I am. And so hence it was like, I do want the New York Times bestseller because that is how passionate I am about this message. Like I will do whatever it takes to get there.
We got there.
So yeah. Okay. Hal's like, let's do it. Let's wrap it up.
No, we got there.
Okay, we got there.
No,
Oh
we
yeah.
got-
Oh, we got there. Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought you would like end the
No,
show.
we
I
got
was
to-
like,
Yeah.
She landed the plane.
Yo,
anyway, any last things that you guys want to say?
I feel like it was like there's just so much that went into it, and that we've may or may not have touched on, but it is a beast.
A beast.
It is a beast.
But that shouldn't be discouraging.
No, it's
So I guess
No.
what would
We
the
want
like
it to just
like
be
what would
real.
you say? I'd be curious, like from your point of view, if someone's like, oh my God, I want to write a book and I want to do this and like I want to do this too. I've been dreaming of this. Where do they start? What's their next step?
Oh fuck.
Are they a writer or not a writer?
I would say most people aren't. a writer.
Okay. Yeah, if they're a writer, they're probably not listening to this.
Yeah, that's true.
But if they're not a writer, it would be I would say to explore options and by networking, like find someone who knows the industry. Start there, like find even start with some research.
Yeah.
But just don't limit yourself.
And come to the London book party.
Yeah, come to London.
We'll
Book
tell
Party,
you
yes.
more.
The great
That's
networking
a
event.
good networking event.
Yeah.
No, but like people ask, like, how do you find an agent, right? And it's like, well, don't just Google one and find one, because how do you know they're actually good? You want to find one through networking. So go to other people's book readings because they will be there. Go to other like book events and whatnot, and talk to those people. And my biggest piece of advice now, doing this once, and I will be definitely doing this if I was to write another book, is that I needed to map out the vision of the book with the book agent or whoever is the right person for this. I needed to map out the vision of the book before I wrote it, because I remember when I was sitting in Beaver Creek and I was writing a book when we was skiing. I think it was 2023 or something, around like Christmas time. And I remember getting really confused in my head because I was like, I feel like I've said this before. I feel like I'm going around in circles because I didn't have this clear beginning, middle, end. I was just writing chapters on different topics, which like whatever, it was fine. I didn't know how else to do it. I was writing chapters on different topics, but then I would say the same thing sometimes in multiple chapters. The chapters wouldn't connect. It just, that was why it was a mess, right? To
So,
begin with. So,
Networking.
Yeah.
But get in the rooms.
Yeah.
Start writing the book, but have an outline, or
And-
at least a
and-
general
and-
outline that can be
and
molded.
can you work with someone to create that outline? I'm sure there's courses out there of like how to write a book.
Yeah.
Like find that so that you're writing the outline in the correct way, because I don't know how to write an outline.
Because the thing that took the most amount of time was the editing, was the manuscript.
And the thing that did my head in the most was the editing.
And then number 3, have an ideas doc. Have somewhere that you're dumping all of your
Olivia
inspo,
loves the ideas dog.
so that don't have a million mental tabs open. But like there's so many people that have written a book. You're not reinventing the wheel. The blueprint is out there.
Yeah.
We're not launching a course on it.
No, absolutely fucking not. I couldn't. Not the expert by any means.
But it's more like it's out there, right? But then too, don't try to do all of it at once. So just if you like the way someone's doing something or you didn't like the way someone did something, put that idea somewhere,
Yep.
save it for later, bookmark it. If you can't hire a project manager, then just put it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you can organize it and kind of revisit it later. But
Yeah.
just do it.
Yes.
It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be right. You're never going to be ready. But if it's on your heart, trust it.
Yeah. And I remember that when I handed in the first draft I was like, I could keep going with this, but I wrote a chapter at the end where I was like, this isn't even a chapter. I don't know where this goes, but this is the last bit of dumping that I need to do. I dumped it down, and it was like, my job here isn't to make this book perfect. That's the editor's job. My job is to just get the ideas on paper. And that's what Charlie would always say to me, just get the ideas on paper and then we can take it from there, kind of thing. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, we're so proud of you.
Oh, I couldn't have done it without you guys, truly.
You did it.
Yeah, well, we did
And-
it because you guys did 50% of what it took to get to the New York Times bestseller. 100%. Yeah. Sorry about the panic attacks at 1 a.m. Al.
And I was going to say on that note as well. So you did it.
Yeah.
Yay. You made it happen. And I totally just lost my train of thought. There was
I have
going
to
to be
pee
something
so
really
fucking
good.
bad.
There was something really good
it
though.
out,
Okay,
get
hold
it
on, hold on.
Okay.
If it's important, it'll come back. New York Times bestseller. Oh, and I remember when you found out you were pregnant and it happened way faster than we were planning because we had a whole plan, guys.
Yeah.
We had a plan. And which was amazing, obviously. But how perfect that baby boy got to be a part of all of it. Like that is an epic story that we could not have written better. And that's that part of surrender too that you always talk
Seriously,
about.
the surrender and like the ego. How's like, let's wrap this up, because the last thing I'll say, I keep saying last thing, but
Lastly.
yeah, on the note of surrender, because I had visualized launching this book so many times, right? And I, as many of you would know, like my outfit is like the suit. Like I wanted to launch that fucking book. I wanted to have my book party. I wanted to be on TV in like a sexy feminine power suit. Like that's just what I feel confident, comfortable in when I'm doing these sorts of things. And that belly was not fitting into a power suit by any means. And that was, I know that seems actually kind of petty, but that was actually hard for my ego. Like I hired a stylist because again, I was just like, yeah, hell, fuck off. I hired a stylist because I was like, I need help with this.
This is not a TV interview.
Yeah. But that was actually really hard for me. Oh my God, Hal's just being a dick right now. That was actually hard for me. It really was, because I'd gotten this like vision in my head of how I wanted to launch the book, and it didn't happen, but it happened better than we could have imagined.
And now you get to tell him when he's here. He was a part of all of it.
I know.
So
I know.
Yay!
He probably did it on purpose. He's like, yeah, Mom, I wanted to be up there with you. I was on
truly.
TV
Do
before
they
I was
know the
even
name?
born. No, we haven't
almost-
decided, babe. We're still
know-
between a few.
But I almost said it.
Don't
Well, we
say
kind of
it.
have decided.
Have we?
Oh, you'll tell me later. Are we
Okay.
having dinner?
You
What are we
don't know
doing
the name?
next?
We're
Where am
having
I
lunch.
sleeping?
You don't know the name?
You haven't
We
told me
talked-
where she's sleeping.
We talked about a couple different names,
Yeah.
but I want to know like the one.
Yeah. Have we decided?
I think so. All right,
Okay,
are we
Let's
done?
announce it.
Okay, are we done? All right. Thank you guys for being here. What a funny ending. And we'll see you. Yeah, stay tuned. And hopefully Hal will come back on the podcast, maybe for a third time. I know it's hard. Sorry, babe.
You crushed.
Yeah, you did crush.
Crushed.
All right.
All right.
Love
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye. Hal.